our presentation. It was a joint presentation during the seminar at the end of my colleague. And it was like, wow, how can you bring these two disciplines together? Languages there and nursing, how do they connect? It was beautiful for people to see that even though these disciplines are completely disparate, you can bring them together. So I'm happy to hear that stuff is going on here, the community engagement is going on here. All we need to do is just look for the commonalities, look for common ground, and build those relationships that will help the students to be able to give back to the community, but at the same time, gaining new life skills, gaining new professional skills. That's a wonderful question. Other issues?
Yeah, just a few questions to myself.
Yeah.
First question is to do with community, rather no, service learning as part of community engagement, integrating it with research. As you go out with your service learning programs in the communities, to what extent do you integrate research? That's the first question. And secondly, what I seem to be hearing is there can be on this campus a number of different service learning courses. And maybe some subject areas collaborating on one particular service learning course, other subject areas collaborating on another service learning course. If I hear correct,
that's what
that it can happen, or it does happen in that manner.
Yes.
So that we understand what kind of approach we would like to take. That is the second, well, you've already answered it. The third one is, from the proposal that you have sent to us, there is the impact of Lang 301 Pro-Act Service Learning International. This is the international service learning course.
Right.
The one that, in my understanding, is the one that maybe will then be the basis of our collaboration.
Of our collaboration.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now I wanted to see what would be the distinction between this international one and the one that you are doing.
That's a good question.
Already
at the
Good.
Good.
I have other questions, but
Thanks
to start with.
That's good. I've had that question like 1,000 times on my campus. let me answer his question very systematically. Number one, how do you make service learning scholarship? There's what we call scholarship of engagement. Okay, in academia you have scholarship of engagement, which means that if you're doing a service learning project in the community, you can decide to do research, which generally is called qualitative research. You are a research participant and you get involved in community projects and you do your recordings, you do your findings, and you can publish. Okay? Even if you don't publish, of course you publish top notch. You want publications. If you want to go from assistant professor to associate professor to full professor, you need publications. That's the one thing you can do. You can take a service learning project that you're doing in the community and you do some kind of qualitative research there and you publish your results. It goes into a peer-reviewed journal, gets published. That's a red feather in your hat. Number two, you could use your research findings from your community engagement activities or service learning activities, and you do presentations at conferences. I'm just giving you guys the whole concept, how you break down what we call scholarship of engagement in little bits and pieces. Publications, you can get involved in that. You can present at professional associations that yours could be psychology, yours could be English, I don't know, modern language could be what they call the Modern Language Association in the United States, which is global. You could present stuff there. Number three, talking about students, because this is not done in isolation, you can get your students to be involved in joint research and eventually joint publications. So by the time some of your students are graduating with either with your bachelor's degree or your master's degree or their master's degrees, they already have some publications under their belt, and that puts them at the higher pedestal when they begin to compete with students that come from other universities. So there are zero ways that you can transform your teaching, which is service learning, curriculum design, and teaching, into scholarship by looking for paradigms and all kinds of instrumentalities that you can use to teach or design courses that are kind of community engaged or focused or service learning. So that's actually the current language now in community engagement. How can you convert your community engagement to come into scholarship of engagement? Because when faculty go up for tenure, they're looking at that kind of thing. You've been teaching, sure, but how do you transform that into scholarship? These are some of the ways you can do it. The Prof's other question was, he's hearing that I'm advocating service learning initiatives across disciplines on the campus. Absolutely. On my campus at the University of Indianapolis, we have service learning in the Department of Global Language and Cross-Cultural Studies. We have service learning in the School of Nursing. We have service learning in community health. We have service learning in biology. And at the end of the semester, what we do, I forgot one other element that I normally ask students to include in their portfolio, is the assessment of what they call the Service Learning Expo. At the end of every 15 weeks of service learning, we organize a half-day service learning symposium where students from across the disciplines on campus who are involved in service learning in various aspects, they come together, they mount tables. Each group will have like one of these tables or two, and they present what they've been doing with the students or with the community stakeholders for the entire semester. So it's a half day. There are speeches from Professor Gam, who is the dean, and then there are also speeches from Mariana Fokron, who is the director of service learning and community engagement at my university. And then we also invite some speakers of the community, like the guy of ProAct Indy that I'm proposing in my paper here, in my proposal here. He comes and gives a talk as well. We have many other community groupings in Indiana that come and they give speeches, and then the students exhibit what they've been doing with students, and they learn from each other. What did you do rightly? How can we borrow your best practices, and so on and so forth. So yeah, absolutely. What I'm advocating here is multidisciplinary community engagement and service learning. And the more the merrier. Once we're doing the same thing in different ways, we can also meet as instructors to exchange best practices. What is working for you? Can I borrow a little bit from you and vice versa? The other phase of your question, Prof.
Is the relationship
the
between the local and the international.
Right. And actually, when I tendered this thing for the first time to my dean, that was exactly the question she asked me. She said, Peter, your line 300 is already doing great, which is very local here. How are you going to distinguish that from your proposal that you're doing with the University of North on Mafikeng campus? And my question to her was very simple. The difference between this and what I'm already doing now very successfully, it's been all over the place in the press, on campus and beyond campus, is that this is an international phase of what I'm doing. What I do in Indiana right now, it ends at the local level. There is no international collaboration, capacity building, or train-to-trainer thing involved in that one that I do there. That one is just between me, my students, and the community. But this one, we are going to involve, one, international role players here in Northwest, your university in particular, and we're going to also use a different community now. We're not going to use Laurel, we're going to use ProAct Indy to have a different experience with them. And they have centers all over the city of Indianapolis. So we're going to make it international by getting you guys involved. The other thing that is very important for us, especially me being one of the directors of the Multicultural Engagement and Global Awareness Center, is that we're going to enable students to benefit from what we call travel away or travel abroad, okay? Because when students come here, I'm just coming from Cape Town, and the image they have about Cape Town is that this is a city where you can, all you see there is you have an engagement with some elephants and lions in Cape Town. So when you bring folks like, when you bring my students here, that is what we call global citizenship. In fact, we are designing a diploma right now, I think it's going to be a concentration or a minor, where students can actually earn a certificate in global citizenship, where they travel out of their home base. Many of them have never traveled. And you give them the opportunity to travel, not just travel, but to come here and get involved in the community, know the community from inside, by teaming up with your students and doing projects for the community out there. So these are the kinds of differences that you don't find in my line 300. By the way, Prof, I think I'm changing the name, because that thing of line 300, line 301 is up to us. I can listen to you guys and come up with a different name. It doesn't matter. This has not been approved yet. So it's between you and us. If we decide that this title can be changed, I'm up for it. If you're going to give a different name, I'm up for it. It's not been approved yet. My dean is waiting for you guys to give your feedback, and we can come up with what an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. And we can always change the name. We can change the learning objectives. We can give it a different name. Come up with different learning objectives. It's up for grabs. So it is sure they saw that similarity. I said, so what's the difference between line 3 and line 301? I said, the difference between what I'm teaching right now and what I'm proposing is the international face, and giving children opportunities to travel abroad, build their global citizenship skills, get exposure to the world, multiply their multicultural experience, and be prepared for what they call the 21st century job market. Because again, if I'm an employer today and I want somebody, I had a company, for instance, based in Mafikeng, and I want somebody to represent me in the United States or in Cameroon or in Kenya, I want somebody who has traveled. I want somebody who knows about something different than Mafikeng. And so when you prepare students that way by giving the opportunities to travel abroad and have contact with other people who share different linguistic and cultural spaces, I believe you're doing something great, and you're preparing them to be globally competitive. And we are really making our students globally competitive because they are exposed to the world. Every May, I take 35 students from the University of Indianapolis to France. They spend 2 weeks with me. University pays, and we have fun. We go to other places. We go here, go there. Take boats and take this and that, and they know the world. Some of them like it. Some of them don't like certain things. But that's how you kill culture shock. So that at the end of the day, if they have to work with people that don't look like them, they comfort talking with some people that don't look like them. So that's what we're doing at the university. And I'm very proud to be part of this deal, because I'm a global guy. I studied in South Africa, I studied in France, I studied in London, I studied in the United States, and studied in Cameroon, 5 countries. What can you tell me? I know the world. So I want my students to be like that, to know the world, have a broad experience of what it means to live as a global citizen. Prof, I hope I answered your question.
You definitely have answered the question.
Any other questions, folks?
Can I follow up if nobody?
Absolutely. Please.
Yeah. I can see that there are certain areas that you actually are, can I say, focusing on in this course, and some of them, if I am correct, have been mentioned here. Where can I find them now? Study abroad, study away, as well as multicultural and global awareness education initiative. Stuff like that. Now, would this be the core of what the service learning course is about? And I would, but also imagine those are international elements of it. I would then say to myself, if then here in the Northwest Province we were to involve students in communities, would they be doing the same thing that US children do in US communities? Or would we perhaps have to think of what can we have them do apart from the international that would be more relevant for our own communities, that would form part of our service learning course? That's what I'm thinking.
Thank you, Prof.
Well,
I've been talking about excellent question. This is the most excellent question. Because I say that with purposefully. Because if we are giving US students the opportunity to discover Africa, okay, by teaming up with students here to give back to the community, and we expect your students to come over there and do exactly the same thing, I think that's a duplication of learning objectives. And so my proposal here is that you look at my learning objectives from the US perspective and come up with your learning objectives based on your experience here in Mafikeng. And we will come up with a blend of learning objectives. I totally see what Prof is saying. How can you make South African students from this campus benefit from having a trip to the United States where they team up with my students in this community of Indianapolis to do service learning? What is different that they're going to learn from what they will get when my students come here? That aspect of it is your baby. I say this seriously, because my dean would be very, very excited if I point out to her that these are learning objectives coming from my colleagues at the Northwest University in Mafikeng. They want to see these things accomplished within this MOU. So I believe that I should throw the ball back to you guys and say, what do you expect your students to be able to benefit from this proposal? Okay, the kinds of things that I mentioned there, global citizenship, community engagement, cultural literacy, global awareness, and all that stuff, is from the US perspective, because I know my students very well. I know that most of them don't kind of travel, but they travel with the US perspective. They have a perception of the world through the American lens. Is that true about your students? I don't know. Is that what you expect your students to know, to come and know the US? I don't know. Do you want them to come and have an opportunity to see if they can come and study the US after having that cultural shock dispelled? I don't know. It's up to you guys to say, Peter, this is a phenomenal proposal, but here is our own side of the proposal. Can we merge those and come up with something that is fully representative of the two campuses? Am I making sense here, folks? Because I certainly see that problem. That this could be kind of one-directional thing because I'm seeing it from my perspective. But I'll be very, very glad to go and sit down with my dean and say, ma'am, I had a wonderful meeting with my colleagues on the campus of Northwest University in Mafikeng, and this is what they would like to see in this proposal. I can tell you, she's going to be excited. And we will then sit down as with the other 4 directors of the center and revise this thing, this draft proposal, and send it back to you guys. You take it, deliberate on it, and then we can come up. We then come to a stage where we think of writing an MOU, which will be beneficial to both of us, and we then pass that through the whole vetting process here and over there. That's why I will answer this question, because seriously, when I was writing this, I had very, very little knowledge about what you guys may have in mind in terms of learning objectives. I don't know. She's doing self learning in psychology. You could be doing something. I don't know what your objective would be, but these are the kinds of draft objectives that I thought we could start with, and then you can help me to kind of fertilize it by giving me your own ideas.
Thank you very much, colleagues. My view with regard to those objectives is that those could be maybe major objectives, and then at subject level we can then be able to come up with discipline specific objectives.
Absolutely. That's it. Thanks, ma'am. And so major objectives, I would say major objectives, and then we have sub or secondary objectives, which are discipline specific. Because certainly, if somebody's in psychology, I don't see how you can have the very same objectives if you're a language person. You know what I'm saying? Or somebody in my colleague here is in political science and international relations. You may have some kind of similarities in terms of global exposure because international relations students need to travel, need to know about the world. But I think that the secondary objective, which will be discipline specific, will be very useful. Thanks very much for that proposal. So we have kind of global or major objectives, and then we have bullets, which will be couple of bullets where we include secondary objectives, which may be one coming from psychology, one coming from English, one coming from political science and international relations, and then of course we can incorporate that in the whole memorandum. Absolutely. Again, that's why I said we need to talk about this in a very open and collegial way, so that we know that we are preparing a product that can be marketable. And I like these kinds of inputs from colleagues. Thanks.
Any more questions, colleagues, comments, objections even?
Absolutely.
Can I just add a quick one? Here at the NWU, we have an office called Community Engagement that oversees all the community engagement related activities at the university.
Right.
And then from there, at the department level, discipline level, we're expected to have all those smaller projects. So I'm wondering as to whether or not in your university you have that university-wide office that oversees community engagement activities, and then what would then be the relationship between it and your center?
That's a good question. The overseeing body that was created just last year in what I call the Mega Center. Remember, I started by saying I'm one of the directors of the Multicultural Engagement and Global Awareness Center, which is called the Mega Center. There are 5 directors. There are 5 directors. One is myself, curriculum delivery. Number 2, we have service learning and community engagement. That's another director. Number 3, we have the interdisciplinary director, which is Professor Dama. We have the International Relations Committee, which is led by another person. And then we have Global Relationships, which is led by another person. So 5 of them. That whole Mega Center Directorate oversees the curricular initiatives coming from the various departments. I mentioned mine is Global Languages and Cross-Cultural Studies. We have nursing, we have sociology, we have all kinds of departments that are involved in separate community services. But the organ that oversees that is the Mega Center, which is the overall boss for that Mega Center is our associate dean. You probably met him, Bill Dines. He responds to the dean, which is her name is Jennifer. So that's the kind of hierarchical thing we have. So we have the Mega Center with the 5 directors. They coordinate various units, but they are a core because we do a lot of things now in isolation. We do all kinds of things in modern languages, in global languages. These people are doing this in service learning, but we have that core. So if we don't actually call it community engagement is just one aspect, like so that's one under Mariana, but the rest of them are interdisciplinary. So we support each other, we help each other with curriculum design and best practices and so on and so forth. If that's what you're looking at, I guess we have that. So the Mega Center actually oversees the functionality of these various units. And we want, because I want to say this clearly, in the past, we function in silos, the whole thing of silos, everybody's in his own little enclave there, and we were not creating the synergy that we needed. We need synergy to function properly and be able to come up with best results. And so we created a Mega Center to be able to create links and networks that will bring us together, thinking along the same lines, pedagogically speaking. And so that happened last year, and because I'm the chair of the Global Language and Cross-Cultural, they gave me another directorship to take care of the curriculum design. And my other 4 colleagues do that. So that's the way we function there. And we give people autonomy, seriously, to be honest with you. We give the chairs and professors autonomy to design courses that meet their various departmental or unit objectives. But at the end of it all, what we're trying to do right now is to break that whole mentality where people are functioning in silos, in isolation, and nobody knows what the right hand is doing and the left hand is doing its own thing, because we suddenly discovered that was terribly counterproductive to the welfare of students. We are there to meet the welfare of students, and we thought that functioning in a way that creates synergy would be the best way to meet the demands of students. And I think so far we are succeeding. Again, it's still in the infant stage. We're trying to see how
that kind of umbrella coordination, which is called the mega center, can do it in a way that benefits all the various units on campus. Yes, we have that too.
And I think without trying to dictate what you're going to present about tomorrow, maybe if you can spend 1.5 minutes talking about that.
Right,
In
okay.
your presentation
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Okay.
I mean, we're also having this a similar experience. A is doing this in her own space, B
That's
is
right.
doing that. No discussion, no consultation.
I like that.
And then the next thing we bore communities, because today is development studies at the local and community.
Yeah.
Tomorrow it's psychology, the next morning it's maths.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, we end up confusing communities.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. That's a good one. Well, because I don't want to jumpstart my presentation tomorrow. I will give you some skeletal thing I want to talk to. Number one, I'm going to first of all start by assuming that people don't know what service learning is all about. So number one, I'm going to talk about what I call the definitional conundrum. Okay, how do you define service learning? Number two, I'm going to think about some of the things that you should be thinking in terms of learning objectives. What do you want to achieve when you design a service learning course? Number three, how do you engage community role players and stakeholders in the community that will team up with you to create a conducive learning environment in the community where you're taking learning into the community and taking some community indigenous knowledge, right, into the curriculum design process that creates a kind of environment that is conducive for achieving your learning objectives. And number three, did I say three or four? Four now. Is going to be, I'm going to be talking about the kinds of benchmarks that you use to assess community engagement / service learning projects. I mean, because it's not very productive if you just design a course, go and teach it, and you never do summative or formative assessment to see whether your objectives have been met or not. So I'll be discussing some of those things tomorrow and some of the things I've been using to assess my own course and some of the things that I do in the community. So that's what I'm going to be looking at tomorrow. So define service learning, take a look at why we even design service learning courses, anticipate some of the learning objectives that you may want to do, you may want to insert in your curriculum design, look at some of the instrumentalities or what I call benchmarks, assessment benchmarks, summative and formative assessment, and of course I'm going to share, I intended tomorrow to share how do you tap successfully into indigenous knowledge base to be able to create courses that really help you to achieve your learning objective. And I will share a few of my challenges teaching Line 300 in the community, and that's what I intend to do tomorrow. Does that help you?
Goodness me. The problem is that probably most of these colleagues in here will not be there.
That's a problem.
That's the problem.
But if you want me to give to let you share the PowerPoint with them, I can share them. I can
Yeah, if you
Sure,
can
absolutely.
send the PowerPoint and then
Yeah.
I'll share it with them.
Absolutely.
That's no problem.
Okay.
Yeah, you have answered some of the questions that I was going to ask, specifically about how you create service learning objective. And you are saying you are going to be talking about it tomorrow, so
Yeah.
let me not then go
Okay.
there. But then I want to raise this other issue of, I can see the kind of direction we are taking as two institutions trying to establish a collaborative mechanism.
Sure.
What I'm thinking is, you talked also of your intention as you indie to try and assist capacity building in service learning in this institution. Yeah. Now I'm saying to myself, if we are going to sit down and draw up a memorandum of understanding, before that capacity building takes place, is it possible that even after the capacity building has taken place, maybe some of the things in the MOU are changed? Because as we go through capacity building, we may understand better what we want to do and think back and say, maybe we shouldn't have had those objectives, but these objectives, having got the experience of capacity building.
That's right. That's a good one. You know how I do with my syllabus? I build my syllabus, and my syllabus is very, very massive. My syllabus is like 15 pages long. And students say, what is wrong with this professor? Okay. So I get to the end of my syllabus and I say, the Professor reserves the right to change or modify their syllabus to better meet the demands of the students. So that gives them the leeway to add, subtract as the semester goes on. So we could, and I see what you're saying, because there's what we call pedagogical evolution. If you start doing stuff and I think we should have added this stuff, you can leave that clause in the MOU and say, this is a working document that is subject to modification based on how our vision of this project evolves. Then that could be, we can have a revised version of the MOU, a second revision of the MOU. But I see what you're saying. I don't know how colleagues are seeing that too, because as you get into the real action, things change. And suddenly you have this flash, these flashes of memory. And you say, I want to add this, I want to add that, I want to take away this because this is now redundant. I want to look at this from a different. I think we can do that. It's a gentleman's agreement, Prof. We agree to leave it open and subject to modification. We can always do that. Absolutely.
My final question. Would you be able to say, after maybe tomorrow, maybe in your slides, for the benefit of those colleagues here that we are going to be working very closely with, to give an indication, say, maybe in a point form, to say, okay, in doing this work of designing service learning courses, please bear in mind the following key things. Just that, so that
the following what?
Key issues.
Absolutely.
So that as we go through, we can reflect on those and then understand what kind of direction we need to go.
Okay.
I think that will be very helpful, so that after you have left, you can sit down and look at this and say, colleagues, these are the kinds of things that we need to be looking at.
That's doable.
Great.
That's doable. I can do that in a summation, the summary or concluding remarks. I'll just.
Great.
Okay, thanks, bro. I appreciate it. I wasn't thinking along those lines at all. Right, you do that. He's depriving me of my sleep tonight. You know what I'm saying? That's fine, bro. Thank you.
Any more questions, colleagues?
How we do it. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope I've been able to make a point that we can always work on. It's an ongoing kind of discussion, so feel free to suggest things. Again, it should really be two-sided, where I'm hearing from you and you're hearing from me, and we get all our colleagues on both sides of the divide to talk the same language. Thanks, folks.
Okay.